Science of Cardio, delivering the latest and greatest and the pros and cons of exercise science. Hello, this is Ryan Fritz with Science of Cardio, talking to you today about velocity-based training. I'm trying to keep this as a simple intro. So this is VBT 101, and I want to thank you for joining me, and hopefully I can answer some questions and give you some insight to velocity-based training. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And you can check us out at scienceofcardio.com for more information. So let's dive into velocity-based training. Velocity-based training is how fast you can move heavy loads or weights. It uses sensors. So you put a sensor onto a barbell that measures your lifting speed in meters per second. So it's basically a scientific and math equation. We're looking at force equals mass times acceleration. So the faster the bar moves, the higher your velocity is going to go. So again, that's measured in meters per second. So if mass times acceleration equals force, if we increase mass or the load of the bar, then the ultimate force or total maximum load that you move is going to go up. But weight or mass is only half of the equation, or one side of the coin. The other side is acceleration. So that's the other half of the equation. So just because you go up in weight doesn't mean that you're going to have optimal success with maximum loads. So if you want to improve your 1 rep max or get stronger, you need to increase mass or the weight of the bar load, and also acceleration or how fast you move it. So if you can increase mass and acceleration, your force will go up. You can also just focus on one force equation or one side of that, just the mass part, or you can focus on the other side of acceleration. But if you want optimal results, if you can get both of those to increase, then your overall strength will go up. So there are different types of VBTs or velocity-based sensors. There's some that are Bluetooth and other ones that are tethered. So the Bluetooth ones that I recommend Enode, Kinvent, Kpower. The tethered ones are a device that usually hooks onto the floor. There's a string that attaches to a piece of Velcro that goes around the barbell or whatever machine you're using, and those will get your bar speeds. So both of them have kind of pros and cons, but essentially, ultimately, they're getting the velocity or the speed that bar travel or how fast the bar moves. So the benefits of velocity-based training is you get stronger, you can increase power output, which a lot of people may not be focusing on. Personally, I have been able to break my personal records in bench press and squats. It also helps you to get out of plateaus. So by using this technique and using a tool to measure how fast you're moving, it gives you a lot of insight and then dials in proper loads and how much weight should I be using. So the science behind this is rate of force development, or you'll see it as RFD. So that stands for rate of force development. Basically, it is the scientific principle or the method or the scientific mechanism that creates us to produce more force. So going back to that force equals mass times acceleration, if you can move, say, 200 pounds faster, your overall strength is going to go up. So rate of force development, a good example is a car going from 0 to 60 miles an hour. If you go slow, it'll still go 60 miles an hour. It might take longer. If you can get it to 60 faster, you will increase the total power or wattage output. So this is super significant when you look at the same amount of weight. If somebody's moving 300 pounds with a low wattage, let's say 500 watts, versus someone who's moving 300 pounds with 1200 watts, they're producing a lot more power or force And that will show up on the field, on the court. If you're, playing heads up against somebody, even though you might have similar strengths, that total force will help you to perform better. So again, along the lines of dialing in proper loads, just like I said, you can do 100 pounds at a certain speed. You can do 100 pounds slow. You can do 100 pounds fast. So just looking at weight might not be the only data point or the optimal kind of effectiveness or the optimal dosage for someone to train with. They might be under training, they might be overtraining or moving too fast or too slow with the weight they're doing their sets at. So this just gives us a lot of framework and a lot more in the weeds or detail on how to properly push and train somebody at the right dosage. So one of the things that I see VBT or velocity-based training getting misused is people will try to get the highest number of velocity or getting the highest or fastest speed. Just because you're moving fast may not mean that you're doing optimal power or optimal weight. So there's usually a correlation with the heavier the load, the slower the bar moves, the lighter the load, the faster the bar moves. So if you have too light of weight and you're moving too fast, it may not improve strength or power. So this goes into goal specificity. If you are working on something like power clean, your speed might be 1 to 2 meters per second, which is more of a speed kind of measurement versus strength. So I'll get into kind of that timing and what's optimal for strength next. So some tips. So for strength improvement, our rate of force development and to get the best out of velocity-based training for strength or optimal strength, we want to shoot for a range between 0.6 down to 0.2 meters per second. So if we are moving slower than 0.2, we have too much load and we can't really influence kind of max strength. If we go faster than 0.6, so 0.8, 1, 1.2, all the way up to 2 meters per second, we don't have enough load. We're not going to improve strength or power. We may improve velocity by those faster speeds, but we're not going to optimize kind of strength or strength power. So an example would be if you have a light load on the bar, you're going to move it super fast. If you have too much weight on the bar, it's going to move slow. So we call this the goldilocks zone. We're looking for optimal weight that we can move fast to get ideal power. So I'll give you kind of an example. So I have a client that bench pressed 135 pounds as their first or warm-up set. VBT speeds or kind of their average velocities for 5 sets at 135 pounds were 0.71, 0.71, 0.64, 0.65, and 0.62. So that's at 135 pounds. Okay, their next set, they went up to 225 pounds. They were getting average velocity speeds of 0.57, 0.51, 0.44, 0.46, and 0.43. So they're moving a little bit slower. To me, this is in that range of 0.6 to 0.2 meters per second. So the first set at 135 pounds, they were kind of 7s, high 6s, moving a little too fast for strength. The second set at 225 pounds, they were right in that range. Then their third set, they went to 275 pounds, and their velocity averages were 0.39, 0.42, 0.38, and 0.28. So again, those are all within that 0.2 to 0.6 speed or velocity. So that tells me that they can do this 275 pounds at the right speed. Now, the key point to this is if we look at the power. So I'll go through those same kind of progressions or sets, 135 pounds, 225 pounds, and then 275 pounds. At 135 pounds. Again, they were moving a little bit faster than 0.6. So they're 0.7, high 0.6s. Their power output was a little over 1,000 watts. So, that's a good baseline. When they did 225 pounds, they were hitting better speeds with their velocity. So again, they were between the 0.6 and 0.2. So they're 0.57, 0.51, 0.44, 0.46, 0.43. Their power went up to 1760, 1400. It's in the 13s and 12s for their other reps. So their comparison of 225, their power went up significantly, about 75% more than it was at 135 pounds. Now, when they went up to 275 pounds or third set, again, their speeds were in the right range or zone between 0.6 and 0.2, but their power went down a little bit. So their best power was 1,200, and then the other ones were about 1,000 watts. So we call this the Goldilocks zone. If it's too light and you're moving too fast, we don't produce a lot of wattage. If we get too heavy and we start to slow down, our wattage goes down. If we get in between and get the right amount of load, our power is optimal. So those are good examples. And then I'll also kind of include this of another client. This is them doing too much weight. So they were doing 45-pound bench press. Their speeds or velocities were 0.17, 0.18, 0.22, and 0.19. So their velocities are a little bit lower, slower, or less than that 0.2 meters per second for strength. Then if we look at their wattage for 45 pounds, they were at 34 watts, 37 watts, 43 watts, and 30 watts. So you can see comparatively, the more weight you use and the faster you move it, you will get a higher power output. Again, there's a bell curve or a Goldilocks zone. We want to have optimal weight that we can move really fast. If we're too heavy, we move slower. If we're too light, we don't produce a lot of wattage. Where the velocity-based training really helps out is with plateauing. So if you're progressing, going up with your squats, your bench press, or deadlift, and you start to plateau, if you start really diving into the velocities of the bar and you start playing around with kind of increasing velocities with kind of submaximal weights, improving those numbers, getting the speeds up, those will directly influence your overall kind of max numbers. So, you would progress your training with the submaximal sets and getting those, second, third, fourth set numbers up faster. So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to try to do a 1 rep max at the end of every session, you might say, well, I'm going to try to bump 5 pounds up and do a faster velocity speed at my third working set, or I'm going to try to beat my bar speeds for number or a set or a weight. So you would say maybe for an example, I'm going to do 275 pounds. This is kind of new for me. I'm going to check and see what the velocity of the bar is. And then the next month, I'm going to try to beat each session and try to get better with those velocity numbers. So really cool, very helpful, and it'll definitely get you stronger. So there is a correlation with percentage of rep max and velocity. So typically you can look at people doing certain exercises and tell, or looking at the velocity averages, the velocity kind of peaks or numbers, and see if they're doing the right load or if they need to go up or down. So I like it because it dials everything in, and we can correlate kind of max effort with lighter efforts. If we're moving too fast, then we're sub-maximally training. We're not getting the optimal benefit out of strength. So some tips are when you're trying to work on optimal strength, you want to be 0.6 to 0.2 meters per second. Anything slower than that, so less than 0.2 meters per second, is not going to help improve strength power. Anything above 0.06, anything faster, so like 0.8 or 1 meter per second, you're going to be moving too fast with lighter loads and not optimize strength and power. VBT dials in proper loads. And so, like I said before, optimal power in the Goldilocks zone. I recommend getting the OVR Performance. That is a company that offers a device called the OVR Velocity. I have a discount code of a $25 off of the OVR Velocity, and that is a tethered system that you can attach to a barbell and get your bar speeds. That will save and record your workouts and give you insights, trends, and improvements. And you can review and go back and look at previous workouts and routines. So I want to thank you. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and like. Let us know if there's anything that you would like to hear about. Check us out at scienceofcardio.com, and we appreciate your time and thank you.